Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here again at the PCI community meeting. Good to see good old friends and meet all of you. And thank you for taking time to join this session. I know it's been a long day, but super excited to be part of this session, which is pretty exciting for me. One of the key things is I've had the vantage point of looking at the digital payment industry for the last 19 years, been with the community. I've also been part of the transformation journey, witnessed it, and today talking about how this is yet again shaping the global digital payment industry. This topic really appeals to me, and I would be super excited to share how we as a community need to navigate as we move forward with respect to compliance. One of the key things that you would all agree that there has been a great shift in the way the digital payment industry has actually transformed in the last decade or so. The so-called cash is the enemy of inclusion has really been executed pretty well by most governments across the world. And there has been a great shift from cash to digital. It is expected that about $33.5 trillion is going to be the digital cash by 2030. That's a big amount of money. And already, at the moment that we are, the cash is already at 80% of the pre-pandemic levels. That is, it's actually reduced by about 20%. And this reduction is also accelerating with about 4% reduction every year. And what this means is there's going to be more digital across the world. And it's not just one region. And this is why I say that. The world is rewriting the rules of money. You would see in North America, you would see a great amount of push towards digital wallets. It's expected that the volume would go up to 52%. That means that for all form factors at any point in time, you would have a lot of digital payments and digital wallets being used. When it comes to Europe, you would see a lot of instant payments picking up in a very big way. The one-leg credit transfer that is in the annual, which will really transform cross-border, cross-currency digital payments, other than the way the SEPA is actually doing now with respect to the European payment initiatives of instant payments. Then, of course, you have the PSD3, which is the stronger customer authentication that is going to come in to safeguard customers from fraud as well as the issuers. So a lot of push is happening in Europe as well. And then when you come to Africa, and specifically, you would see things like M-Pesa, a lot of mobile payments really transforming the way payments are being executed. And of course, LATAM, no-brainer there when you see Brazil picks really picking up. And every Latin America country essentially wants to replicate what is happening in Brazil and the kind of transformation that it's doing to the society there. Move forward to India, the UPI today does about 20 billion transactions. That's right, 20 billion transactions a month. And it's expected that the cash would come down to less than 10% by 2028. That's a huge volume of digitization that we are seeing. And then as you move forward to South Korea or Japan, you see a lot of QR-based payments, which are actually transforming the entire digital payment industry. So overall, a lot of changes that's happening across the world, and we are in for a reset button. But what's more exciting is the form factors of payments are also changing. One, we already have cards, and of course, cards are going to play a key role, even with digital wallets coming into execution because you would need top-up. But what is more exciting is the fact that CBDCs, the central bank digital currency backed, that is the central bank backed currencies, are also driving these changes. For example, in China, the yuan is really picked up in a big way. And today you can make merchant payments using CBDC or yuan currencies, and same is the case with Nigeria. So lots of form factors of payments, especially with CBDC being pushed. Of course, it needs regulatory support. And then on the other side, you see stable coins. In free markets such as US, stable coins, with the Genius Act being passed, you would see a lot of push. Of course, may not be the consumer side of the house, but you would see a lot of B2B payments, smart contracts. And what is more exciting about stable coins is the fact that it can be programmed. That is what it essentially means, that I could condition the payment to perhaps a vendor based on execution of a certain condition that is required. So these form factors of payments are also transforming the entire digital payment industry, and that's what is really going to be exciting. And how does it matter for us as a community? Because at the end of the day, we are here as compliance stakeholders. One of the key things is with stable coins, with smart contract kind of payment transfers, there's going to be more data. And once there are more data, obviously data security, compliance standards, those kinds of aspects comes in a very, very big way, which means that more responsibility on the shoulders of people out here. While I spoke a little bit about the way the digital payment industry is transforming, the next couple of minutes that I have with you, I would want to talk about the security that is going to play out, which we all need to, as a community, grapple with. Last year, I spoke on quantum security, one of the community meetings in Asia Pacific, where I presented about the fact that we as a community need to get our act together with respect to quantum security and get ready for quantum security, because this year, 2025, as stated by United Nations, is the quantum year. McKinsey actually wrote a very nice paper saying that it's been years since we've always believed, and there was this major joke that used to run, that for the last 30 years, we've been saying that quantum is going to come in the next decade. And that's been busted, at least as we speak, in 2025. That means quantum, the Q day, is a reality today. And we need to expect, and we are expected to actually prepare for that day when it would actually break. And what that means is quantum could break an RSA algorithm in less than 10 seconds, what would take classical computers about 300 trillion years. So that's the kind of impact that quantum could have on cybersecurity, and everything that we know is based on cryptography. And so hence, it needs a lot more attention. And one of the key things that I see even in the PCI standards, we have this construct of actually inventorizing all the cryptographic keys, which is a very good start. But having said that, we need to start preparing ourselves for crypto agility. The other major thing with quantum is going to be the fact that all your asymmetric keys, like your digital signatures, things of that kind, are going to need to be transitioned to what NIST-approved algorithms, which we all need to start working on. And one of the key things that is something that we need to all prepare is for the Moscow theorem, which essentially says that harvest now and decrypt later. In order to prepare for that, especially in the finance and regulated kind of environments, this becomes extremely important, which means that you have to prepare, as per the Moscow theorem, you need to identify the time period that your data needs to be protected, plus the time you need to migrate should be lesser than the time you have to actually prepare for the Q day, which essentially means in many cases, we are running out of time. So this is a call for action, and I'm sure as a community we would work, and then probably in the fag end of my presentation, I would probably call for actions we as a community need to work on. But point that I wanted to make in my second section of my presentation was that this is something that we need to work and be ready with as a security professional. But what does this mean? The new reality is going to be multi-rail. We are going to have multiple rails of payment systems. Of course, we have already started seeing that. We have instant payments. We are going to see a lot more stable coins, crypto CBDCs coming into picture. We're also going to see many local governments starting pushing their own mandates. So many of these payment rails are going to come into existence, like the Singapore, Thailand, and Cambodia, if I'm not mistaken, is coming together as part of Project Nexus, right? Where they are bringing in and making it cross country in terms of interchange, intercountry payments, right? So lots of these things are going to come through with multiple rails and multiple risk of the ecosystem. And as cyber threats is expected to also reach about $15 trillion because of all these multiple risks that are going to come in up from whatever we've got today. So just for a moment, if you look at the current threats that we all have, which, of course, I don't need to preach to the choir, but just to remember is the fact that we've got these kinds of social engineering, credential theft kind of attacks, which are actually happening, and one of the key interesting things is where you can trick the chatbots to actually reveal a lot more information. You've got supply chain attacks. I'm not sure how many of you have recently seen a major CRM company had this issue of OAuth authentication tokens being compromised because of the integration with a partner, a third-party risk which emanated because of that construct. You had insider threats. We have, being a forensic investigator ourselves, we have started seeing a lot of insider threats also happening with, with people modifying balances at the authentication, at the authorization stages, which is very harder to find in today's construct. And you got identity checks, MFA bypass attacks, though MFA is a very, very important control, which we all do as PCI assessors, as PCI ISAs. I'm sure all of you are keeping that in mind, but we also have started seeing a lot of MFA bypasses, which essentially leads to a lot of these compromises. Then we've started seeing API cloud misconfigurations, which has been in vogue, and of course, the IoT and multiple other things. And I'm not sure how many of you have read this recent Access 7 attacks, which is the management system which was actually controlling the entire IoT systems, one of the popular companies, which was actually monitoring all the IoT, which is very popular in healthcare, and then was also used by many of the ATM providers, was compromised for data exfiltration, and popularly known as Access 7 attacks. So the point that I was trying to drive is, with the current ecosystem, with the current limited rails, we already have witnessed sufficient amount of attacks that are happening in place, and something that we need to keep in mind. But what's going to come tomorrow is even more, right? Which is with the deepfakes, AI-generated phishing attacks, which is we've already started seeing volume increase tremendously, and that's only going to happen, going to increase more and more. We've going to have one of the key things is on malicious libraries. We already saw that with SolarWinds. One of the key things that we could anticipate more is about prompt injection, prompt hacking, adversarial LLMs. One of the key things that we have done a lot of work on is AI red teaming, and in fact, we've also have a lot of solutions around that. But one of the key things that we have started seeing is that using large language models, especially with the agentic AI, and in the payments world, we are already started seeing use cases on agentic commerce. I'm sure many of you would have heard this in the news, that lots of organizations, large retailers, are started experimenting on agentic commerce. Agentic commerce, something like you can book your vacation next year based on your last year vacation, and the agent would actually not just book your itinerary, but also make the payment. So those kinds of systems would also be as vulnerable as what the previous attacks have already shown us. So in the last 5 minutes that I have with you, just want to spend on two important constructs, right? So what do we need to do? So I have put together two major asks and probably thoughts in terms of how we as a community should approach. One is, of course, from a security standpoint, and the other is from a compliance standpoint, right? So security, one of the key things that we need to keep in mind is, with these multi-rail payments that are going to come in, we can't have fraud management systems which are isolated. all the fraud management systems have to be integrated because there are going to be attackers who are going to cross-pollinate between multiple rails. And though they are going to be local implementations, the risks are going to be global. The second is fraud monitoring and cybersecurity monitoring has to be integrated as well, is what I feel at the end of the day, because most, and not most, all cybersecurity incidents would lead to a fraud, right? But not all fraud leads because of cybersecurity. So there's a lot of intelligence that fraud monitoring systems could actually help cybersecurity and vice versa as well. And that's something very, very, very important. And one of the key constructs that we are started seeing is, of course, shadow AI. And one of the reasons when we interact with multiple stakeholders in cybersecurity, the product development team does not want to come to cybersecurity because they would ask hell of a lot of questions. And that's one of the reasons they bypass security teams, but they use a lot of generative AI or AI in use. So AI is obviously a great thing, and businesses want to do it and want to implement it. But having said that, there is sufficient amount of controls that needs to be done. And one of the key things that we believe is that you can't stop it, but you need to address it much, much earlier in the cycle. So, and then of course you got the entire concept of the fact that we need to prioritize detection. And today detection is not good enough, but you need to be able to respond in real time and to make sure that actions are actually taken. So security as a portion, I heard my earlier speaker as well talking about concept of security, privacy, and perception. But connecting the dots, I think security, when you double click on it, you need to have an integrated approach with all telemetry coming into your security systems and not just one-off, and be able to take a very, very decisive and quicker action. And response should also be not something that we could wait for longer hours, but in real time. The other thing is from a compliance standpoint. Compliance today is, and today one of the key things that we all need to get our act right is that we can't, the implementations of the digital payment industry is all going local. And there are going to be multiple compliances that are going to come by, right? And whether we like it or not, that's something that is going to happen. But the ask from us as a community and as standards, including the PCI Council, should be to actually bring together a common standard across multiple rails, so that at the end of the day, compliance becomes a lot easier and does not become a burden, either for the enterprise or for the consumer. Second is, of course, the AI accountability. At the end of the day, we all know that AI's systems need to explain themselves for every decision they are taking. And hence, it has to be by design and not as an afterthought. And what is really concerning is the construct of shadow AI, which needs to get addressed in a very, very big way. And data governance, we spoke about blockchain, and especially with blockchain and CBDC, or for that matter, stable coins, privacy is something that cannot be a good to have. It is a must to have, because at the end of the day, all your payment transaction is going to be on the block. And hence, privacy concerns has to get addressed. And that's where the regulators hopefully come together to address these concerns on a global basis. And of course, last but not the least, is to have clear mandates around quantum security. One of the key things that I've seen people say that, hey, quantum is far away from today, but I strongly disagree with that statement, because we need to be ready, even if it was not, even if you have not seen a utility-based quantum computer today, it might soon happen with the kind of innovation that is happening by Microsoft or Google or by IBM or Quantium. There are lots of disruptions that's happening in quantum computers, and we need to be ready for the same. So with that note, thank you for giving me a patient hearing. And just like to conclude with 3 basic things. So first, the digital payment industry is going through a major transformation. I'm super excited for the community, for the society, that it is going to make it more inclusive. Cost of transaction is going to come down dramatically, and cash is going to get lesser, which is going to help better inclusion, and more people are going to come into the formal economy. But having said that, second construct is security is going to be an extremely foundational for this success to happen. And last but not the least is compliance has to enable the top two. And I'm very hopeful that this community will put together our ideas and thoughts, as we have done in the last 19 years of the PCI Council, to make sure that the society succeeds. Thank you so much for your time.